Trump did what? Trump says he won't invade Canada after all. Trump, he no longer wants Canada. He says he does not have any time for us anymore because he only has 3.5 years left. That's not enough time to take over Canada, which means Orange Man Bad Boogeyman is now gone. That's the only reason Canadians elected the Liberals for a 4th time. Without the fear of annexation, the Liberals have nothing to run on. Their track record is absolutely pitiful. So their new plan, bribe their way to victory. They better move quick because the Conservatives are about to explode in the polling numbers. Now that Canada has no fear over takeover from the United States, mainstream media has just announced 10 more floor crossers coming down the pipe. How convenient is that timing? Let's get into this report.
A cup of tea in Terrebonne.
Yeah, exactly. Quite a few cups. Do you agree with the assessment around the election?
Yes, Mr. Carney does not want an election, but also he's got some key people talking to opposition parties. I'm told up to 10 MPs are still in discussion with Liberal delegates from Mr. Carney's office. So there's still discussion going on. So they're still hoping to get more of opposition MPs from the Conservative Party or even the NDP, not the Bloc Québécois, I don't think, but it's still a possibility that more may cross the floor to join the Liberal candidate. So
Mark Carney definitely does not want an election, regardless of what you've seen in the polling numbers. Those things are about to flip. Now that Donald Trump has come out and saying, I don't want to annex Canada, I actually want nothing to do with Canada. And the only reason that the Liberals won the last election is because Orange Man Bad. So there's zero surprise that Mark Carney does not want an election.
The assessment around the election?
yes, Mr. Carney does not want an election, but also
No, he does not want an election. But that is also why he's working on 10 more floor crossers. I just want to put this into perspective for Canadians to understand. In a 70-year history of Canada, there's only been one floor crosser every election cycle. So every 4 years, only one. And it's never created a majority government. When they cross, it's because their principles have changed and they cross the floor, but it made no difference if they cross. This time around, the floor crossers are going to create a majority government for the Liberals during a time when Canada is in an affordability crisis. And now with the tables have turned, Donald Trump does not want Canada. Time's ticking for this Liberal government that is soon to be heading out the door. Will they be able to steal these by-elections and get their majority? Or are they planning to get 10 more floor crossers? We needed a conservative-led government yesterday. We still have these wackos in charge, and check this out.
A poll from Nanos Research shows almost half of Canadians think the economy will weaken over the next 6 months. As data scientist Nick Nano says, Canadians are becoming more pessimistic.
It's a knock-on effect of what I'll say, the increasing price of gas, the war in Iran, people worried about trade with Donald Trump and the U.S. and
I thought we had the very best deal with Donald Trump. The best. That's what Mark Carney told us. And the war in Iran and the price of gasoline, you know, if we had pipelines west, east, out to the Pacific, and we're selling our oil to the world at these higher gasoline and oil prices, Canada would become rich again. But instead, we have MOUs that are as useful as toilet paper that we flush down the toilet. As long as we have a liberal-led government, our economy is heading down the toilet.
All those things rolling up into Canadians believing or thinking that the economy is more likely to get weaker than stronger in the next 6 months.
This comes as voters are heading to the polls in 3 federal by-elections, including a closely watched race in Terrebonne, Quebec.
Terrebonne was a coin toss, and I think it's still going to be a close race this time. The big question is, will the voters in Terrebonne, when they're thinking about how they're going to cast their ballot, think about whether they want the Carney government to have a majority or not, because it could be one of the critical ridings that could determine how strong or weak the Carney government could be in the coming months.
If Canada wants to survive the next 12 months, Terrebonne better reject the Liberal government. In fact, the other 2 Liberal strongholds also need to reject the Liberals' majority. That will show everybody that's planning on these 10 floor crossers, Canadians are rejecting the Liberals. Here's the news release that Donald Trump no longer wants to annex Canada.
Donald Trump's threats to annex Canada may have stopped because of the president's deference to one man. A new book is offering insight into the role of King Charles. Julia Chapman on this for us. And Julia, the book derives the detail from an interview with the U.S. president.
That's right, David. This is a book written by Robert Hardman, a British journalist and royal commentator. It's mostly about Queen Elizabeth II, but it does also touch on King Charles. And he interviewed President Trump back in December, speaking about his relationship with the late Queen, with the current king. He says the US president asked him what he thought about his plans for Greenland. He said he disapproved, and he said, while we're at it, leave Canada alone as well, or you'll make the king very unhappy. Now, Hardman says the response that he got from President Trump was one of surprise that Canada still has a monarchy, suggesting it wasn't something he was aware of. He says President Trump also lambasted Canada's leaders, political leaders, saying that they are terrible, and complained about where the US-Canada border had been drawn, saying it should have been some 50 miles further north. But he appeared to back away from any kind of threat to take Canadian territory, saying that it wasn't something that he was going to achieve in the time he had left in office. Now, CBC News has reached out to the Prime Minister's office and the White House for comment.
Maybe, just maybe, Donald Trump is realizing that Mark Carney was a massive mistake, and he's starting to come around to Pierre Poilievre. Maybe all of those podcasts that Pierre has been on have been watched by President Trump. Can you imagine President Trump watching Joe Rogan and the Diary of the CEO and say, you know what? I kind of like this Pierre Poilievre guy. He is my choice. So I will no longer threaten Canada for annexation, because I realize that's the only reason that Canadians voted Liberal, because they can't run on their devastating track record over the last 11 years. Here's Donald Trump's official statement. Trump is redacting the 51st statement. They've got 200 years of history and all that "Oh, Canada" thing. You can't deal with that in 3.5 years. I guess it's not going to happen. We don't need Mark Carney anymore, or the Liberals. They're gone. Is anybody planning on traveling using an airline? WestJet adds a $60 surcharge and cuts flights as fuel costs soar amid Iran conflict. I really wonder, is Mark Carney paying this fuel surcharge for his private jet around the world? Or is he looking at Canadians going, I'm going to fly around the world and you are going to be paying a surcharge? All of these mainstream polling companies show Mark Carney surging in the polls. They only poll 1,000 people. Who actually picks up on these polls? Is it Liberal voters, conservative voters? Usually a lot of the conservative voters are working 3 jobs, and some of the Liberal supporters are not working at all. Who's picking up all of these phones? There's a new pollster that came out, Maple Polling. He's polling you, the public. None of this mainstream media polling. And their latest polling results for April 4th to the 6th, Mark Carney's approval rating is positive 17.7% and negative 78.1% negative. That's right. The people's polling has made its verdict. We don't want Mark Carney no more. Here's mainstream media's polling numbers. Federal leader polling. Mark Carney's approval rating is at record high 61%, with only 32% disapprove. You know what I don't understand about that is literally 50% of the population voted conservative. So how is it even possible that 61% approve of Mark Carney? Pierre Poilievre's unfavorability is 50%, while favorability 38%. Has no one watched these podcasts? They were exceptional. And Avi Lewis, the most radical, woke, left-wing, we're going to keep every single ounce of oil in the ground, heat pumps for everybody, and we got all of those wonderful equity cards. Remember the equity cards? Yeah, that leader, Avi Lewis, favorability is 23%, while unfavorability is 18%. So you're telling me the radical left extremist ideology is winning in Canada? Tax me harder, daddy. Just tax me harder. The National Post reports data shows Americans aren't heading to Canada. It's the other way around. U.S. citizens are leaving, but data compiled by Association for Canadian Studies indicates few of them are immigrating north. I wonder why. Could it be Americans are rejecting Canada? Well, clearly this data shows this. U.S. citizens are leaving the United States and avoiding Canada like the Black Plague. I wonder why. Is it all those floor crossers? How democratic of them to have all these floor crossers? Or is it the collapsing standard of living? Or is it the anti-energy policies, or giving away all our land to the First Nations, or our freedoms are under attack? Which one is it? Gun grab? You name it, Canada has it. Mainstream media is trying to prime the public in accepting that we want to join the European Union, a collapsing society. The headline reads, Canada in the European Union? Polls suggest broad openness to the idea. Well, now that Donald Trump doesn't want to annex Canada, they need to redo this poll. Canada's facing a major helium shortage, and this is causing problems for cancer research.
The war in the Middle East is now hitting Canadian science labs. With helium exports from Qatar cut off by the conflict, a shortage is now threatening critical research at Canadian universities. As Peter Cowan reports, it's putting million-dollar lab equipment and cancer drug research at risk.
Every 5 weeks, these nuclear magnetic resonance scanners need to be refilled with helium. It's essential for important research at McMaster University. But thanks to a global shortage, their supply is cut in half.
We are now on allocation of 50%, meaning if I need 250 liters of helium, they will only deliver 125 liters. And there's a significant price increase as well.
The war in the Middle East has shut down helium production in Qatar, which produces 1/3 of the world's inventory. Helium isn't just for party balloons. It's important to several industries.
Well, the largest applications for helium are semiconductor chip manufacturing and MRI scanners.
MRI scanners need helium to keep magnets cool, but they can go a long time between refills. The NMR scanners at universities across the country cannot. If the helium level gets too low, it could permanently damage them. That would halt the search for new cancer drugs or finding safer battery chemistry, and could cost millions to fix.
There is no substitute that we can use in these instruments to keep them magnetic. So without a continuous supply of helium, we can't do the research or maintain the instruments that we need here.
In Toronto, a weekly shipment has arrived safe to the Princess Margaret Cancer Research Centre. But the worry here is how long that will continue.
If it gets worse, then we will all be in trouble.
Canada produces helium, but it has to be sent to the U.S. to be liquefied. Now there are calls to build that infrastructure on this side of the border.
We would not be depending on other countries. We would be self-sufficient. We would be completely independent.
Producers say the volume of Canadian helium hasn't justified the investment.
We have helium flowing down this 2-inch copper line.
For now, some facilities are building helium collection systems. By recycling 80% of the helium that escapes, they hope to keep their machines running even through a global crisis. Peter Cowan, CBC News, St. John's.
Imagine we lived in a country that could be self-sufficient. The problem is the Liberals would need to get out of the way. They are anti-energy and anti-helium. They do not want development of any sort because that will derail us from Mr. Net Zero's plan. We got some breaking news. Gabrielle Hardy just posted on his social media account, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. Tomorrow we're publishing a full document, and what you're going to discover is even more disturbing. The Carney government announced Grays Bay project in Nunavut, a road to the Esauk Lake mine. But who owns the mine? The Chinese government owns the mine. A $750 million of your taxes is going towards building the infrastructure to allow a Chinese state-owned company to abstract our Canadian Arctic strategic resources. Canadians pay for the road. China takes the ore. This is massive news. Mark Carney is giving a road to China to abstract Canada's ore. This is mind blasting. Wake up, Canada. We are giving our country away to China. This post got 359,000 views and it's just getting started. Check out this news release. You're going to have to share this with every single Canadian that you know. This is in French. I'm going to put English translation so that you could read. If you don't speak in French, you could read what they're saying. But this, wow, just take a look.
À qui profitent ces voyages en Chine? Ce qui est très inquiétant, puis on le soulève souvent sur le comité d'éthique, c'est la présence de Brookfield à toutes les rencontres et tous les grands projets que le premier ministre poursuit présentement. Le ministre Champagne est en Chine pour se rapprocher, on dirait même à une vitesse assez spéciale. C'est quasiment 2 fois en 2 mois qu'on est avec le gouvernement chinois. Puis on apprend qu'encore une fois, Brookfield va être autour de la table. Donc nous, notre question est assez simple. Est-ce que l'écran éthique du premier ministre a été activé? Est-ce qu'il y a une analyse un petit peu plus approfondie sur à qui va profiter finalement tout ça? Puis on apprend aussi qu'encore une fois, c'est le fonds de pension des Canadiens qui va être mis en gros investissement ou qu'on retrouve dans l'équation, puis l'argent du public va encore servir potentiellement à enrichir des intérêts privés. C'est que si Brookfield s'enrichit, le premier ministre fait de l'argent puis il s'enrichit lui aussi. Parce qu'il est lié directement avec la performance de Brookfield. Moi, j'émets des faits. Dans un moment présentement où est-ce que j'ai l'impression que la démocratie est très, très critiquée puis les gens perdent confiance en nos institutions, je pense que c'est plus que temps qu'on surcorrige de l'autre côté. Et on nous a présenté le premier ministre comme un guerrier vertueux qui était là pour les bonnes raisons puis venir guider notre pays. Ouais. Là, finalement, tu te dis, ben crime, à chaque grande décision qu'on prend avec l'argent des contribuables, ben c'est Brookfield qui indirectement va en bénéficier et donc que le premier ministre s'enrichit. Et ça, c'est un grave problème. Mais là, je vais vous donner une exclusivité parce que ça va sortir lundi dans mes documents. Le gouvernement a annoncé le projet de Grays Bay. Ça, c'est au Nunavut. Okay. Et là, c'est de développer des routes qui vont se rendre à une mine. Mais à qui appartient cette fameuse mine-là de Esauk Lake? Au gouvernement chinois.
Mark Carney used fear of Donald Trump and annexation to cozy up with China. But now that Donald Trump has just dropped the hammer, saying he's no longer going after Canada and annexation, our sovereignty is fine now. What's going to happen with Mark Carney's plan to cozy up with China? Are Canadians going to wake up before it's too late? An incredible turn of events. CTV panel exposes the Liberal Party's allegiance to China. Holy crap.
Mel, as a former comms director, I mean, this is something that probably lands on your lap like a grenade and you have to try and figure it out. But, you know, even though we're going into a break week next week, so, you know, the Prime Minister won't probably have to face any questions on it in the House of Commons, this is still not something that they want to have to deal with, clearly.
No, and this one stinks to the high heavens because when you think about Michael Ma and who he is, he was a conservative. So he knows full well what the conservative policy has been for years on the Uyghur genocide, the fact that there is unequivocally a genocide in China against Uyghur Muslims right now, and there has been for years. It's extremely well documented. And the conservatives have been advocating for years to raise more awareness about this and to ensure that trade with China does not include items that have been made as a result of forced labor of the Uyghurs who are facing this genocide. So Michael Ma absolutely knew that that was the reality and knew that as a conservative. Now he's a liberal. I've seen a lot of spin from liberals on this, that he's like, oh, he's new. He doesn't really know how committee works. Like, let's brush this off as just a mistake. No, it's not. There is committee prep. Okay, before every committee meeting, caucus members go to prep where they talk about what their questions are going to be. He would have talked about this, which means this was the government's strategy. And if it wasn't the government's strategy and he went rogue, then that stinks even more. And there should be some very serious questions asked about who told him to say these things.
And it's interesting, Carl, because at the same time, there were a lot of liberals that came to his defense afterwards. I mean, Rob Oliphant, who is the parliamentary secretary for the foreign affairs minister, they're not also, in asking about, forced labor, they're not saying the word China. They're saying writ large, we're against all forced labor. Everybody is, but when pressed on whether or not they could say in China, they're not saying it. What does that tell you?
That's right. And I think that's part of a strategy to not to offend China. But the problem is that now they've put a circle around that stain, thanks to Michael Ma. And frankly, I think that if he had said those things as a simple liberal candidate during an election, he wouldn't have lasted the day. He would have been turfed, right? But now he's an MP that you need for that majority. So he's
a floor-crosser. He's one that you've recruited,
exactly.
you've brought over.
So sometimes you have to be careful who you wish for and who you get. But now they're stuck with him. And frankly, the fact that he said he condemns it, as you said, broadly, well, doesn't mean that he believes that it's actually happening in China. Mm-hmm. Like, does he believe that it's happening in China? Yes or no? That's a serious issue. And frankly, because of the circumstances, you have a lot of people circling around him to defend him because of that coveted majority and how thin the margin will be in 2 weeks when they win those by-elections.
So at what point do we start celebrating Michael Ma? He could be the reason that the Liberal Party of Canada popularity collapses. This man could be the one, the only, that takes down the Liberal Party.
You claim about forced labor in Shenzhen. Have you witnessed this yourself? You witnessed just a short answer. Have you witnessed forced labor in Shenzhen? Yes or no? So thank you.
Thank you, Michael Ma. Can you actually believe it? Donald Trump has reversed his annexation threats. He looks at Canada and goes, you know what? I actually don't like Mark Carney and the Liberal Party. I've been watching Pierre Poilievre's podcasts, and he is my new guy. I want a country that is willing to drill, baby, drill. Get those resources to the world and make North America a fortress. Is Michael Ma the person that's going to save Canada? Are we going to start celebrating Michael Ma for exposing the Liberals and what they are? To Canada, forming economic ties with China, and making Brookfield rich. I'd love to hear from you in the comments section. I'll see you on the next report.